Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Apex Racing TV, and welcome back to the Detroit Region SCCA Sim Racing Series presented by Superlap. This is round number 4 of the season, coming to you tonight from Watkins Glen. My name is Ron Mullins. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Charles Michelle, and in the virtual production hall we have our old buddy Joshua Wilkie. After a 1-week break for Halloween, this series is back with 3 more races to bring this season to a close. And Charles, the first 3 races were some really intriguing affairs. From the absolute race of attrition at Long Beach 2 weeks ago, the bridge hit at Road Atlanta the week prior, or the display of dominance from Russell Soto at the start of this season, it's fair to say that this season has given us a lot of talking points thus far. So Charles, heading into tonight's race at the Glen, I have a feeling that trend of memorable moments will probably continue.
Yeah, Ron, I think you're absolutely right. And good evening to everyone. It's, this is probably one of the most used tracks in iRacing. It's in almost every series, whether that's single make series or multi-class racing, different configurations. Even the NASCARs run here during the seasons. So it's going to be one of those where you're going to have a lot of people that have quite a bit of laps of experience running on this track. So that's going to make for some very exciting racing, I think. It always seems like it just puts on a good show when we're at Watkins Glen. There'll be a couple of things I want to talk about as far as where some of the trouble spots are, because there are a couple here, and we'll talk about that a little later into the show.
I feel like Watkins Glen is a very popular track at the moment in iRacing. I say that because, and our producer Joshua Wilkie can speak to this since he was a producer for that broadcast earlier on today. There's another series here on Apex Racing TV that was running at this exact racetrack, albeit it was a GT3 race rather than a Formula 4. And we even got some more Watkins Glen action coming up tomorrow with the Radical Esports Cup. But here with the Formula 4s, we've got a smoky affair left for these drivers in the midst of this qualifying session. About a minute left on the clock. Russell Soto, who skipped out on the last race of this championship at Long Beach 2 weeks ago, he is back to form at the front of the running order in the number 50 car. The series admin saying the pole time currently at a 1:47.184, about 4/10 of a second between himself and Kevin Rold, who's off the back of a victory at the last race of the season at Long Beach. He's in second, Dominic Batts in third, Kevin Reuter, I believe it is, currently slotted in the 4th position as it stands in this qualifying session. Aaron Reuter, my apologies. Aaron Reuter currently in fourth. You can see these drivers using as much of the racetrack that they have at their disposal. It is such a... I mean, this racetrack, it's one where you're seeing these drivers go lap after lap, getting so close to the barrier, sometimes a little bit too close, as we just saw from Dominic Batts coming out of the final corner, hitting the wall. But you can see these drivers taking so much of a risk every single lap. And I think, Charles, the point that you raised about these drivers being very familiar with this racetrack, having done countless laps in some cases, I think that could be the reason why we may see some more mistakes compared to some of the other races that we have seen thus far this season, just because these drivers are so familiar and firmly in their comfort zones.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's absolutely possible. Because, yeah, as you see with the lockup going down into turn one, Kevin rolled there. Yeah, they, like I said, they do a lot of laps here, and a lot of times it's just adjusting to the car more than it is the track, because you've got so much track time as it is. It's just a matter of finding out what the limit of the car is. And these cars, as I've mentioned during the season, probably have more horsepower than downforce. So some of those corners, as we saw with the smoke show coming out of turn 9, that is one of the trouble spots that we'll be watching during the course of the race tonight. It's just such a weird corner as far as camber is concerned. You just have to hit that line just about perfect. And then, even then, you can see Andrew Moed there with a spin coming out. So that won't be the last one we'll see there. That probably won't be the last contact. You know, the final corner, as we saw, you have to be very careful not to hit that wall on the outside. And then, of course, here, Super Lap 2 coming through the bus stop, which is the other real trouble spot. Saw a lot of cars trying to take too much exit curb coming out of there, and just the car just bouncing through and losing control. So that'll be another issue that we'll have to be watching for during the race.
Yeah, a lot of things that these drivers are going to have to try and manage in the midst of the 30 minutes of racing action that we have coming up, set to begin in the not-too-distant future here on Apex Racing TV. Still seeing some cars out there on the racetrack. This is a Super Lap 2 car, fittingly numbered 4, currently slotted 20th in this qualifying session, 24, coming up to 25 minutes into this 20-minute long qualifying session. Always kind of funny in these open qualifying sessions how long they can run with some of the drivers left out there on the racetrack, trying to get as many laps that they can. The Super Lap cars have always been really intriguing to follow all throughout this season. We've had this sort of series in a series, so to speak, from this season thus far. Speaking of the Super Lap cars, and we usually talk before the start of these broadcasts as well about how interesting it is having people just, regular people just showing up to a place like Superlap, which we'll be hearing about a little bit later on this broadcast, but people showing up to a place like that and just driving in a league like this, appearing on Apex Racing TV. We've had a consistent cast of characters. We've had a consistent string of storylines to come out of that class. The Superlap 3 and the Superlap 4 cars have been the ones to grab victories thus far this season. Aiden R is behind the wheel of the Superlap 4 entry. That'll be numbered 15 in this sim. And then Jake R behind the wheel of the Superlap 3 car, which was victorious in the first 2 races of the season at Laguna Seca and Road Atlanta. He is currently being in the number 13 car. As you can see, the drivers hitting the racetrack at this point in the midst of a warm-up session now, 10 minutes, the calm before the storm, so to speak. Whatever way you want to judge it, this is the final little break that we have before we got 30 minutes of racing to look forward to around a racetrack 3.45 miles long, 12 corners in all, labeled by iRacing, which is funny because their track map only lists 11, so iRacing, poke them with that stick again to get that sort of consistency going on. But that's a big thing with these drivers, is consistency. You got a track that you're familiar with. You got 12 corners, 11 corners, however many corners are on this racetrack, depending on what sort of corner number iRacing wants to give out for that day. Regardless of how long this track is, regardless of how many corners are around this racetrack, just being able to consistently hit your marks is, I think, going to be a big bugbear for these drivers, Charles.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I was going to go back and just kind of mention something. The Super Lap cars, it's almost, for people of a certain age like myself, it's almost like having a LAN party where you've got a lot of people in the same room doing the same thing, but then you're doing a LAN party inside of another event. So it's a very cool concept, and I hope it picks up and takes off for those guys, because I mean, when you're in there and you've got, potentially 7 other guys or 7 other drivers that you're racing with, to get those bragging rights after the end of the race, and yep, I finished higher than everybody in here. I mean, it's a really cool thing. And then, then you've got the race within a race. So now you've got those guys against the other cars that are somewhere out in the internet. So yeah, I kind of like it. So yeah, consistency on this track is extremely cool. It's extremely difficult. Even with the number of laps, because the cars sometimes seem like they just behave a little differently, from cold tires to hot tires, low fuel to full fuel. So it's one of those that you're trying to be consistent and still making adjustments during the course of the race to manage what the car you got under. You see a little bit wide there coming through the chute for the 420 car, Jason Williams, and did not make a lot of contact with the barrier, so it's going to continue on.
And looking at a few drivers out there on the racetrack in this warm-up session, trying to figure out who's about to cross the start-finish line in a couple of moments' time, and possibly right on board with a driver to give you a beautiful view of this beautiful edifice in the world of American motorsports. Watkins Glen, it's such a historic racetrack as well. Hosted Formula One back in the day, really throughout what's considered the killer years of Formula One, and sadly back in 1973 in a very tough race meeting that year. It was Jackie Stewart who went on to be the champion that season, was actually meant to race in, I believe it was his 100th Grand Prix that weekend, grabbed the pole for it all, was meant to retire after that, but his teammate Francois Sever passed away as a result of a crash heading through the S's. So Watkins Glen, it's historic. However, considering that it did host some races in that area, you can occasionally have moments like that. But Watkins Glen still a wonderful track in the world of motorsports, and going to see some fantastic racing from it as well. Looking to try and ride on board with a driver about to click over to start their lap. I think Aaron Reuter may be clicking over to a brand new lap right now in the number 27 car. There he is, heading down into turn number 1. Downhill, you got the curb to deal with as well. You want to take a little bit of that exit curb. However, you don't want to be too risky, because you can pick up a slowdown and just be in for a world of trouble, because from there all the way down until the bus stop, you are flat out in these Formula 4 race cars. And with straight line speed being so important, slipstream being important as well, these drivers are going to be pending the floor pans in their race cars, heading down now into the bus stop in just a couple of moments' time. Full commitment from these drivers. Get as close as you can, get as close as you dare to that inside Armco barrier through the first part of that section. Then you come out of it as smoothly as you can. Want to hit those curbs, but you don't want to brutalize them, otherwise you're going to be in for a world of brutalization yourself. That was the outer loop that we just saw Reuter go through. Downhill through the chute into turn number 6 is a downhill left-hander. A little bit of off-camber nature to it as well. The track is falling away from you. Really, really tricky to try and go through that at a speed in which you don't go off the track. This is kind of the opposite case. Turn 17, you got some elevation change and some camber kind of working in your favor more than anything else, so you can carry a bit more speed into that corner than you might expect. This corner, however, back to the same issue with turn 6, downhill into the braking zone. Don't want to run wide, because you're going to pick up a slowdown and be in for a world of trouble. This is a corner that I absolutely despise around this racetrack. It's turn 9. Charles, I'll have to touch back on in a couple of moments' time to get the name that you always called that, but turn 9, that is such a pain-in-the-butt corner, and it's really the last, I wouldn't say the last corner around this racetrack, because you still got turn number 10 and turn 11, the final corner that we just saw Aaron Reuter coming around to complete a lap of Watkins Glen. But turn 9, that's the section, regardless of how many laps I do around this racetrack, that's the section that always comes back to bite me. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and it's just the way the track's designed. It's the connector from the short chute, from NASCAR chute, basically straight line. So you've got kind of a mixed camber. It tries to give you a little bit of help coming through there, but if you're wide coming on the entry, you kind of get hung out with a little bump. And it's just tough to recover it, and it just wants to fall away from you as you're going through, and you want to lose the rear of the car. So it's a very, very tricky corner.
Very tricky corner. Really, I think you could best describe every single corner around this racetrack as being difficult. It's going to throw some curveballs these drivers' ways. Got a whole lot to keep our eyes out for in the 30 minutes of racing action that we have coming up here on Apex Racing TV for round number 4 of the Detroit Region SCCA Sim Racing Series presented by Superlap. We've got some fantastic partners to make this series possible, and while we're in the midst of this warm-up session, I think we'll hear from some of those sponsors. Coverage of the DRSCCA Sim Racing Series on Apex Racing TV is brought to you by the DRSCCA. The Detroit Region Sports Car Club of America, aka the DRSCCA, has been providing motorsports events since 1948. With over 1,400 members, there is no shortage of knowledge, history, and trailblazing ideas like this sim racing league. Thank you to all the participants and spectators for being a part of the augmentation and evolution of the region. The DRSCCA, of course, goes far beyond the virtual realm. In 2024, the region is hosting over 40 events over 60 days that can get you both behind the wheel or so close to it that it'll blow your hair back. The gamut of behind the wheel events includes road racing, road rally, rallycross, autocross, and a competition driving school. Support for the Detroit Grand Prix, Formula SAE programs, and Street Survival are also amazing opportunities to help sculpt future and professional drivers. Check out drscca.org for more information. Additionally, we would like to thank Waterford Hills Road Racing, Metro Detroit's only permanent sanctioned road course. Waterford Hills, located in Clarkston, Michigan, hosts a 6-weekend race series, competition driving school, and 9 public open track days. The track is hot from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on these event days and is open to the public. A nominal $5 entry fee is all it takes for you to get close to the action. Check out waterfordhills.com for more details. An additional thank you goes to the Michigan Turn Marshals for their support as well. If you'd like to get close to the action, be sure to check out michiganturnmarshals.org. They can train you to support races like the 2025 Detroit Grand Prix. And last but certainly not least, we would like to thank the supporting partner of the DRSCCA series, that being Superlap. Located on the world-renowned Woodward Avenue in Berkeley, Michigan, Superlap is a sim drive studio, a space to meet and compete. With professional-grade racing simulators, they are a premier racing and driving experience venue. They will help you achieve your motorsports goals with education, practice, and training. If you're a race fan, you may be familiar with Formula One. Well, interestingly enough, the reigning 3-time Formula One world champion is a pretty big proponent of sim racing. If Max Verstappen uses a sim, shouldn't you? You can race and practice against an AI roster, go head-to-head with other humans, or both for that matter. They also offer league play like the DRSCCA League. Go to superlap.world for details. Thank you to all the partners and people who make this series and these broadcasts possible, and now on with tonight's action. Alrighty, everybody, still in the midst of this warm-up session, but we're slowly drawing to a close of this. 5 seconds left on the clock. 3, 2, 1. 10 minutes already out and away. These drivers going to get yoinked back by iRacing, back to the pit lane in just a couple of moments' time. Set to get things up and rolling for what is going to be a compelling evening of racing action here for round number 4 of the DRSCCA Sim Racing Series presented by Superlap. 30 minutes of racing action at the Glen. It's a historic track in the world of racing. It's one that a lot of these drivers are familiar with, but even though these drivers are going to be in their comfort zones, I have the distinct impression that some of these drivers are going to be too confident in the fact that they're in their comfort zones. But one driver who's certainly very confident in his chances all season long, for that matter, is Russell Soto, grabbing another pole position from this series at a 1-minute 47.184. That is a pole time for tonight. Kevin Rold going to join him on the front row. Starting this race in third is going to be Dominic Batts. Next to him is going to be Aaron Reuter. Sean Fritz going to be starting this race in fifth. Ryan Goff going to be starting in sixth. Andrew Mowat behind the wheel of the number 14 car going to be starting this race in seventh. Jason Williams going to join him on that fourth row. Rounding out your top 10 is going to be Alex Reuter and Lincoln Olson.
Yeah, starting in P11 is Andrew Gross. Sean Gaynor is going to end up start in 12th. Trent McMillian in 13th. Michael Smith in 14th. P15. Jake R. Superlap 3. Aiden R. in Superlap 4 in 16th. Eric Christensen in 17th. Eugene Clark 18th. Jay Lasco 19th. Superlap 2 entry in P20. And then rounding out your grid, Michael Rodriguez in 24th, Andrew M. at Superlap 7 in 22nd, and William Lindner in 23rd. And that rounds out your 23 car grid.
And 23 cars here with us tonight. That, I believe, is the highest amount of participation that we have seen all season long. Really nice to see some drivers hit the racetrack with us and some of those Superlap competitors as well. Racing at Superlap's location, that should give you more of a reason to take a visit to their location in Berkeley, Michigan, because that is pretty cool having people just... You know, I think we mentioned this in the warm-up session earlier on. It may have been the qualifying session for that matter, but nevertheless, just having people just, I wouldn't say off the street, so to speak, but coming in, driving on a sim rig at Superlap's HQ, and then just joining us for tonight's racing action. It's been a really compelling storyline just looking at those drivers in the Superlap car. Of course, our attention is going to be on the battle for the win. He wasn't here for Long Beach, however, pretty much every single time that Russell Soto has been with us in this series. The driver of the number 50 car has had some experience driving some Formula 4 machinery in real life. He's a very talented racer, a very talented sim racer as well. Certainly proved that in the first 2 races of the season, back with us here for the 4th. So I think it's fair to say that Russell Soto is probably going to be the driver to beat here tonight. But Charles, this may be a little bit of a loaded question. If anyone's going to challenge him, who do you think it's going to be?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go with, the top 4. We've seen them pretty much at the front of the field every race. Soto, rolled, Batts, and Reuter. So, that would be the ones I would be looking toward. But you never can tell when you're going to get somebody else come in and challenge. Somebody gets a good run out of the start, and we'll just kind of see if they can just work their way up the field.
If a driver gets a good start, they are going to be feeling very comfortable off into turn number 1. That section, that is where you can make or break your races here at the Glen. So many times, whether it be in real life or in this sim, some drivers can run into some difficulties there. Charles, quick question before we get things up and rolling for this race. Do you think that's going to be the trouble spot, or do you think there's another one out there on the racetrack that's probably going to catch these drivers out even more?
Well, for the first lap, it's basically everything up to the bus stop until the tires get hot. But yeah, so the bus stop is going to be your tricky area, as well as turn 9. But anytime they're side by side, it's going to be difficult.
I think we have a brief technical issue with my colleague here, Charles. Charles,
yep.
That cereal box Wi-Fi router will come back to bite you in the world of iRacing. So,
well, I won't say that. We won't blame that. I've had issues with iRacing over the past couple of weeks, and just random disconnects for whatever reason. So anyway, we'll let you take it, and I'll be loaded back in just a minute.
All good, Charles. Gonna be here for this race, which is now underway. The green flag's down. The drivers are on their way. Pretty good start there from our pole man of Russell Soto. He's gonna be leading them off into turn number 1. Side by side was Kevin Rold and Dominic Batts. They nearly came to blows coming out of turn number 1, but they get through fairly smooth. Looking at a fight involving Aaron Reuter and Sean Fritz going side by side. Make that 3 wide with Dominic Batts heading up through the S's for the first time, but these drivers feeling oh so racy at the very beginning of the race. You gotta make hay while the sun is shining. These drivers gonna try and go for some moves while the field is as bunched up as they are. Gotta say though, breaking up a little bit, you can see that field slowly splitting off. Really, Jason Williams and Michael Schmidt covered by a whole lot of time, but you can see the drivers making their way through the bus stop the first time by. May have been an off-track moment from Michael Rodriguez behind the wheel of the 55 car. He has gone off the circuit. I believe the Superlap 2 car may have followed him along in that off-track adventure, but looking at that, yeah, there you can see the 55 car very slow. There's the Superlap 2 entry heading down into turn number 6, so it looked like it's fairly scot-free with those 2 drivers, but look at Batts getting the move done down the inside, heading into the toe-in contact midway through the corner. They get all kinds of crossed up, all kinds of sideways. Batts involved in that, Reuter as well. Reuters, I was thinking that they got away with that incident or near incident fairly scot-free. They have another incident hang through turn number 7. I'm curious, Josh, if they'll possibly find a replay of that in the not-too-distant future once this drama cools off. The drama is still intense, though. Dominic Batts, who we're following right now. Lincoln Olsen, mega sideways coming at turn number 9. A huge sideways snap from Olsen He keeps it going in a straight line, but it looks like he may lose out on a position, as it looks like Aaron Reuter tried to get a move done past him. Now Bat's looking to try and fight back on Reuter side by side, heading through the final corner. They're still going to be side by side on corner exits, but leading lap 1 is going to be Russell Soto. Behind him, though, it is absolute and inalienable pandemonium at this point in the race. Rolled running in second, Ryan Goff in third, making up 3 spots. And Lincoln Olsen, who are following right now in the number 16 car, has gone off to a flyer. He's already up 5 positions from where he started in this race. That has been a brilliant start to 2 things for him, but looking all throughout this field, look like most of the field has gone away with the start fairly scot-free. Taking a look at some replays of the incidents towards the very beginning of the race, this one being the one heading through the bus stop, and you can see a little bit of contact being made with the Superlap 2 car and Michael Rodriguez in the 55. Looks like not a major amount of drama, no aerial acrobatics to note, but a small little bit of contact, a small little bit of damage, and a spin for the 55.
Yeah, just a little bit of contact. You can just see that, as we see another contact there, another replay. That's Christensen in the 8, getting a little tap from the rear, going through the toe. And so, there was a lot of hard racing there on that first lap. I did manage to get in and see most of it. As we see a car upside down.
Aaron Reuter. That's Aaron Reuter upside down coming out of turn number 6. What in the world has happened to the driver of the number 27 car? I think there was an incident with himself and Dominic Batts. Batts was dropping back around about the same time as we saw Reuter begin to drop down, so there is a major collision between those two coming out of turn number 6, or coming through turn number 6. Regardless of where it happened, that was a huge amount of contact between those two, and here is a replay. Reuter on the inside, Batts on the outside, Reuter trying to carry as much speed as possible. Big crash between the two of them. Reuter getting picked up by that car and thrown around. Some janky stuff going on with that collision between those two drivers, those two cars phasing in out of existence about 5 times in the span of about 4 seconds there. But nevertheless, it's a racing incident, I feel, more than anything else. I'm not really going to assign blame to one driver or the other just based off one preliminary look. Looking at that incident, though, that was just clumsy.
It was, and it looked like it's like Reuter tried to just tried to get back on the throttle, and maybe the front just kind of pushed a little bit, took him a little wider than he needed to go, and the contact was made. But yeah, it's a racing deal. We're on lap 2. That was very close between McMillan and the 15 car of Aiden in the Superlap 4 machine. As McMillan works his way through. And I think that was Goff that just got past. I think he was off on the side of the track, and he's towed back to the pits. So another car that was up toward the front at the start of the race has already had to tow back to the pits for damage.
I just saw a brief off-track excursion for this man, Eric Christensen, behind the wheel of the number 8 car. That was heading into the bus stop. Looked like he just decided to take to the runoff area. Currently running in 17th as it stands at this very early point of the race. Looking at a fight, though, involving Michael Schmitz and Jake R. behind the wheel of the number 3 Superlap, while the number 13 Superlap 3 entry of Jake R. Lots of numbers there in the span of just a couple of seconds, but he's running in the 8th position as it stands at the moment. The Superlap 3 and the Superlap 4 cars have been the ones trading blows thus far this season. Looks like the Superlap 3 car getting off to a flyer, though. This is probably the best performance we've seen from a Superlap driver thus far. Really getting dicey with a lot of drivers up and down this grid, and he's had a pretty good start as well, making up 7 spots in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. He's having a great run so far. Just kind of looking at the lead here. Soto's been really good about just kind of checking out versus the field early in these races, but not so much today. Rolled is staying in the draft. He's about a half second back, but the combined, the two of those guys have basically just kind of left the rest of the field. Fritz in third, it's 5.7 behind the leader, but behind him is a whole train of cars.
Yeah, you can see this train of Formula 4s beginning to form. Fritz, Olsen, Moed, really just covered by barely any air. It's less than a half a second between those drivers. They're running effectively in no man's land at this point as they have to go back about 2 seconds to Williams in 6th. Looking at a fight, though, heading into the bus stop. I think there may have been a spinner a little bit farther up the road. I heard the tire squealing, and there it is. That, I believe, may be Alex Reuter behind the wheel of the number 72 car. So the Reuters running into some difficulties in this race. One of them ending up on their lid, the other going for a spin, heading through the bus stop chicane. It's a very easy mistake to make, though, Charles. The curbs around this racetrack, they're so important in terms of trying to find lap time and just shaving a couple of inches off of the distance of your lap. And in these Formula 4 race cars, that is very important. But occasionally, do have some drivers misjudges. We take a look at a replay of an incident with Michael Rodriguez in the 55 car just going plain off the circuit. I think he may have just gunned it to spin the car around, and didn't really work out too well as he made contact with the inside barrier as well. But getting back to the point I was going to mention a couple of moments ago. It turns out getting back to the point I was going to mention is too much of a mouthful for me on the air tonight. I feel like the curbs are that's a big bugbear for these drivers, trying to take a right amount of these curbs without just jacking your car up into the air and just spinning around like a top in the process.
Yeah, that's the truth, especially at the bus stop. When we were doing the team training here at Watkins, as we're on board there with Schmidt in a battle there with Jake R, the Superlap 3 car. We'll continue to watch that. There's a specific line going through, as you saw Jake R actually taking it. That is the fastest line through the entry of the bus stop, is just basically riding the top of the curb on entry, as we see Jake R making his way through. I think McMillian maybe just got a little bit wide on entry there, too wide. But it's a kind of a danged if you do and danged if you don't. If you take that, it's probably about 0.3 of a second faster than basically just kind of clipping the curb. However, it's a lot less stable, and so one minor mistake in your car is off the track, maybe into the barrier. So you have to be very careful how you approach those curbs, and you have to just kind of let the car kind of ride over the top of them and then get back on your throttle and brake. If you start doing too many things at one time, you just end up hurting yourself in the long run.
I think with the curbs heading through the bus stop chicane, Charles, you got to be decisive in terms of how you're going to hit those curbs. Oh, yeah. You need to either avoid them like the plague, just barely tap them, or just go full send over them. It's a very different driving experience and a very different race car on the iRacing platform, but as you can see, a replay of that spin not terribly long ago with Reuter coming out of that chicane. With those curbs, I remember doing some hot laps around this racetrack in the Dallara IR01, the fictionalized open wheeler car with like a V12 engine producing like 600 horsepower. It is an absolute beast of a race car. And I remember doing laps around this racetrack and having to hit those curbs. You just have to skip over them like it's going out of style to be able to find any sort of speed. So you need to be decisive when it comes to how you hit those curbs, as we just saw a nice replay with another Superlap competitor, that being the Superlap 3 being driven by Jake R, getting some moves done heading through the bus stop with some drivers going off around it. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what we were talking about. There's, like I said, you're absolutely right. You either take the curbs or you don't. There's no real in between. So you can run without just clobbering the curbs, and your car's going to be more stable. You're going to be a little slower than the cars that just get it right over the curbs. But you've minimized your risk. So it's a risk reward thing. So minimum risk, minimum reward, maximum risk, max reward. And these guys right here are not worried about anything going on behind them. They got themselves a nice little battle heating up here with just over 10 minutes to get done in the race.
And you can see this race is slowly but surely flying by. Two drivers that are certainly flying, though. Well, not literally, hopefully not literally, but metaphorically speaking, in terms of the pace they're showing. Russell Soto and Kevin Rold. This is an odd position for Russell Soto. compared to how he did in the first 2 races of the season where Soto was just absolutely dominant. We haven't really seen him in a position like this where he's feeling a lot of pressure from Kevin Rold in the number 9 car right behind him. Rold already has a victory this season, that coming at the 3rd race of this championship at Long Beach 2 weeks ago. These two are the only ones that have backed their race cars into victory lane thus far. They're going to try and continue that happy streak for each other. It's about 7.5 seconds farther back to Fritz running in the final podium position in 3rd. So these two very much in command of this race, looking like a fight of titans going on here between Soto and Rold. This is a fight for the ages.
Yeah, I was watching Rold the first half of this lap, and he basically had a really good run. The draft working well for him. He tightened right up to the back of Soto's car and then just kind of sat there. He didn't really try and make any moves. I think he's just being patient. He's waiting toward the latter stages of the race before he's going to try and do anything to try and take the lead. I think that's a good strategy. He's riding around. If he's maybe he's cut his fuel a little bit, so he's doing a little fuel saving as well. As we see the 13 car, that's Jake R, the Superlap 3 machine around in the tow. Looks like he's got the car righted, but looks like Sean Gaynor, definitely got some front end suspension damage on that car.
Yeah, you could see that 22 car skidding off the circuit right now, sawing at the wheel to try and keep that car going down the racetrack in the right direction. You gotta take a look at a replay. I think it may have been an overly opportunistic move, possibly from Gaynor. No, may have been a spin from the Superlap 3. It was a spin from the Superlap 3, and Gaynor with nowhere to run or hide, clipping Jake R behind the wheel of that number 13 entry. Just wrong place at the wrong time, heading through that section. It's another real pain in the butt corner. It's a corner where you tend to see these like argy-bargy incidents where it's just one driver spinning and another driver getting involved with nowhere to go. Looking at that from the perspective of Gaynor in the number 22 car, and you can see how much that screwed up the front end of his race car. That's gonna be a tough pill to swallow. Yeah,
90 degree left hand down is not good.
Crap. I just punched my microphone there. That was my apologies.
No worries. And and you could just see Jake was just coming out of the apex of the corner as he was losing the rear of the car. And then the same thing with Gaynor. There's just nowhere to go because you're just concentrating on trying to get the car to go through the corner as fast as you can make it go. And then you're trying to get back on the throttle so you can get and keep your momentum going. And just when you think you're ready to put your foot down, there's a car sideways in front of you, and there's not really anything you can do.
See, that was pure professionalism a couple of moments ago. Professional in broadcasting knows how to talk into a microphone and also knows how to backhand it trying to put a bottle of water down. So that was pure professionalism broadcasted here on Apex Racing TV tonight. I mean, I'm gonna be replacing this microphone in probably a couple of months' time. So no harm, no foul, and outside of a slightly misaligned pop filter, I think we are good to go for the rest of this broadcast. That was kind of funny. That noise, I've been recording some voiceovers when I've accidentally done that to my microphone and haven't been known that the noise is biblical, so that must have come across really loud there. So my apologies to you, Josh, for possibly blowing your eardrums out a couple of moments ago. But nevertheless, looking at the battles continuing up and down this grid, there's Lincoln Olsen running in the 4th position as it stands at the moment in the number 16 car. He's had a pretty good showing thus far, up 6 positions, as we're going to take a look at a replay of a moment involving the Superlap 2 car. You can see him heading into turn number 9, the pain in the butt corner. Oh, and he has a big pain in the butt collision, backing it into that outside tire barrier. Turn 9. Gotta love turn 9.
Turn 9, and you could just see it was he was just a little wide of that inside line, so he was just coming a wide entry. So it's one of those that you could take it wide, but you've got to cut it narrow to clip the apex on the inside. You can't halfway it. Again, as we were talking about with the bus stop, you either stay really tight or you stay really wide, but the middle is the kind of the no man's land. So we're seeing Soto and Rold coming through there now. You can see the tight line they're using coming into that corner, and that's really the sweet spot for that corner. If you come through there half a car width wide, you end up doing what the Superlap 4 car did.
And these drivers have a very fine line that they're trying to run around. And that's the thing with this racetrack. And it goes back to the discussion of comfort zones. These drivers know this racetrack. Some of them probably know it's like the back of their hand. At the same time, being too comfortable with a racetrack can lead to these small little mistakes that can just snowball into a major collision. Saw that when I was doing a broadcast around this very racetrack earlier on today. So have it be known that it can happen to all sorts of different racers at all sorts of different racetracks. It's just a matter of being in a situation where you feel like you are going to be overly confident and just trying to back it off a teeny tiny bit. You can see these two drivers at the front of Soto and Rold still continuing to be dominant in this race. I think they've certainly hit the sweet spot of feeling confident in their chances, but not overconfident to the point of making a mistake. However, these two are going tit for tat in terms of off-track encounters, battling hard, and also just running the most out of their race cars as possible. Just saw that camera angle of Russell Soto heading out of the inner loop down the chute into turn number 6. And just seeing that car hop around in the runoff area, trying to use that curb on the outside of the corner as best as he possibly could, shows you that these drivers, as much as they are battling hard, and even though we are over halfway into this race, they're still going to be pushing it like it's going out of style. They're going to be wearing these tires down to the canvas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did notice that both those cars, neither one of them jumped the entry curb at the bus stop. They're both avoiding that like the plague. They're taking the very safe route through there. And speaking of 14 around Moed, that was very close. Olsen got away with that. Able to sneak by as Moed coming out of turn 8, just losing the rear of the car. And that was a very, very close call.
Yeah, just clip the grass on the outskirts, send him around. Gotta take a look at a replay of this. Following Moed in that number 14 car touches the grass, and you can see Lincoln Olsen. I think we got right on board with his perspective, because that had to have been absolutely horrifying from his perspective, seeing that car as sideways as it was and get as close to Olsen's car as it ended up doing. But Moed having a big moment of drama. Lincoln Olsen can't really say that he gets away from this incident completely scot-free, because despite the fact he didn't damage his car, he probably just, his heart rate probably shot up through the roof as a result of all that. And I can't necessarily blame him for that. So looking at that from the onboard shot, that was just, it was terrifying. There's no other way you could use to describe that. That was just terrifying.
Yeah, and Olsen got very lucky there. It was a great job by Josh with that onboard with the slow-mo, to show how close that really truly was. As we're watching with another car that's off the track, another replay there. I believe that's what got them side by side to begin with, between Olsen and Moed. And yeah, just Moed overcorrected, trying to correct that slide, and that's actually what saved Olsen's race.
Yeah, just losing out on a tiny bit of time ended up saving him. But hey, you know, it's the world of racing. Stuff like that can happen. I have seen stranger things, believe me. Looking at the fight continuing here between Soto and Rold, we're slowly approaching the 10-minute left to go in this race mark. That's a mouthful if ever I've said one. But Soto and Rold still beginning to pull away, continuing to pull away between themselves and Fritz, who I don't think we've talked about too much. Sean Fritz running in the 3rd position in that number 19 car, up 2 spots from where he started in this race. It's been a nondescript drive, and he's running effectively in no man's land at this point. Well farther back of this duo of Soto and Rold, but well farther in front of Lincoln Olsen in 4th. So Fritz at this point in time, maybe even on his phone at this point. Certainly these two aren't, as it looked like they were nearly going to bump draft heading through turn number 4 a couple of moments ago. Rold is playing the exceptionally patient game, though. He has not even thought about pulling out the slipstream even of Russell Soto's car. So I'm curious what the deal is between these two, Charles, whether or not it may be like a game of fuel-saving leapfrog, possibly a game of fuel-saving chicken. That's probably the better term to use. Whether it's that or whether it's just Kevin Rold being a bit more patient than we have seen some drivers be in the past this season.
I've noticed that each time they come down the back stretch going into the bus stop, he's kind of at a different position. Maybe instead of a couple tenths back, he may be 4 tenths, 5 tenths back. So I think he may be doing some timing to see what that run's going to have to be in order to get through before they get into the bus stop. So it may just be a strategy call, but like I said, it's a good strategy. He's not really in danger of losing out. He's managed to hang on to the back of Soto's car for the entire race. So he's in a good position to make his move whenever he's ready to make it. So it may be one of those last lap passes that he's just kind of biding his time.
Yeah, I'm not going to rule that out in the slightest. We've seen some drivers, not just in this series, but just generally speaking, in terms of the many broadcasts that we have done together, Charles, kind of play that patient game and just be like, hey, look, not going to reveal my cards until the end of this race where there is no room to counter. I've talked about this a little bit throughout the season, but I am an SCCA member, have been for the past 10 years. I got my 10-year membership pin earlier on this year. Whenever I was running in autocross back in the day, I would always want to have the last run compared to my competitors, just so I had the last say. I think this may be what Kevin Rold is doing, and seeing that telemetry and hearing to the engine notes, Rold is not pushing the issue at all. So I think he wants to have the last say in how this fight's going to shake out.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think he's just said, you know what, there only needs to be one pass during this race, and it's me getting by him and him not having a chance to get back by me. So we'll see how it plays out. With about 7.5 minutes left to go, he's in a really good position, just kind of like I said, as you said, biding his time and just waiting for the proper moment. They've stretched the gap out to Fritz. It's now 12.2 from the leader back to P3. Fritz has done a good job. Of course, he had a little help from Moed with that half spin or full spin, and which checked Olsen up a little bit. So he's managed to get himself about a 4-second gap or so over P4. And the rest of honestly, to be fair, I'm kind of shocked that we've had the attrition that we've had tonight. This is generally a pretty good track for clean racing, but it was very aggressive from the start, and I think that's caught a couple people out.
Yeah, I think that was what ended up deciding a lot of these drivers' fates, that over-aggression towards the beginning, that overconfidence towards the beginning for these drivers, either getting involved in other people's mistakes or being that other person making that mistake. It's tough, though, in these races. These Formula 4 cars, not the easiest to drive in the world, if we're being completely honest. They're essentially just a go-kart with some plywood wings stuck to it. Not a whole lot of aerodynamics to speak of. Really, the wings are just on there, in my opinion, for novelty and novelty alone, not producing a whole lot of downforce are those wings. So these cars, really tough to drive, and as we ride on board with some of these drivers, you can just see them sawing out the wheel, trying to get these cars around the racetrack and finding the grip where there really isn't any. You could tell what kind of racing has these low grip cars just based off the fact it feels like they're driving in the rain despite it being perfectly bone dry out there on the track at the moment. Strangely enough, there have been times, Charles, where driving the Formula 4 car on iRacing in the rain, I felt like I've had more grip in the rain than I did in the dry. So these cars, definitely a tough handle.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I've never driven these cars in the rain. So, but obviously with the rain tires, you're going to get that treaded grip, and that's definitely going to help your mechanical grip, and that's really what these cars rely on. So it really doesn't surprise me that much that the rain tires are going to give you a little better performance than the slicks. As we see Dominic Batts, did he call? Oh, he had it caught, and then he had a car behind him, and not sure. So, Alex Reuter, oh wow, Alex was having a pretty good run. He had a couple little small errors early, but managed to just kind of hang in there. And as you can just see, just really trying to hang on to it. But we're gonna say that might be down to a little bit of just a little bit of racecraft. That I think Alex may have stayed in there a little harder than he needed to, and didn't give himself a lot of room to make a correction there. But that's what happens when you're racing. Sometimes that happens even to the great drivers.
Full commitment, sometimes a little bit too much of a commitment, and you have some stuff like that happens every now and then. But That was tough, and that was also nearly seeing a driver ballpark at heading out of the final corner onto that start-finish straightaway. Haven't had that happen thus far in this race. I feel like the only time we've ever kind of had it happen was probably the bridge clip at Road Atlanta,
yeah.
Probably about 3 weeks ago at this point, where I forget who it was, actually hit the bridge, and that was kind of a realization to a lot of people in the sim that, hey, you can actually hit the bridge there. And I'll be honest, folks, I've not gone into the sim and set up some iRacing AI events where I can maybe experiment with that, but it seems like it is possible to be able to hit the bridge. You just got to be very, very lucky or unlucky, depending on which way you wanted it to shake out. But looking at this fight between these two drivers, Soto and Rold still covered by barely any air, a quarter of a second separating these two drivers. And we're coming only 3 minutes left on the clock here, Charles, so probably about 2 more laps of racing action. So it's getting to the point where the tension is really starting to build.
Yeah, you're right. I was just checking that as you were talking as well. Yeah, I'm going to say 2 to go, just crossing the start-finish line. So we'll see if Rold is going to start getting antsy, if he's going to hold it for that last lap. He's got a nice run here, quarter second back. So get this good run through the S's, up the hill, coming down the back straight, going into the bus stop. You can see the gap closing. It's basically nothing at this point, and he just kind of backs out again. So just said, I'm going to leave it for the very end. And we're going to go through here, as you can see, just kind of clipping that inside curb on that entry, not really kind of jumping the cars over there. So being very patient, and Rold is still right there, so, 1 car length back.
Yeah, still covered by barely any air, and I'm curious where Rold is going to try and go for that move. Part of me has a sneaking suspicion that he's not going to try and do it heading into the bus stop. Part of me thinks he may try and go for it at some very odd sections of this racetrack. Maybe heading into the heel of turn number 8. That would be, that's a sort of move where you can't really cover it off. If he goes for the move heading through the bus stop on the final lap of the race, that would give Russell Soto the chance to try and slip back past. So I'm curious as to whether or not Rold is actually going to go for that move heading into the inner loop, or if he's just going to try and save up his stuff for an attack later on that final lap of the race, which those drivers are about to start in just a couple of seconds time. Looking at fight involving Lincoln Olson and Andrew Mowat. 2 hard chargers in this race. Olson up 6 spots, Mowat up 2. Currently, the hardest charger is actually a tie. If we're being completely honest, it's between Aiden R in the Superlap 4 car, which is leading of the Superlap competitors at this point, running 9th overall, so a very good race for them. And then Eric Christensen is running right behind, up 7 spots as well. So those two cutting their way through the field like a hot knife through butter, but our attention is firmly on these two, Soto and Rold. They have been running line astern all throughout this race. This may be the shot that Kevin Rold tries to take in that number 9 car. Will he have the momentum? Will he have the run? You can see Soto trying to block it off. Rold going for the move around the outside, heading down into the bus stop chicane. Looks like Soto's going to hold off the challenge for now, but Rold losing out on some time for sure. And I'm curious as to whether or not he just used up all of his stuff, or if he will try and formulate a challenge towards the end of this lap. Heading downhill into turn number 6 for the final time in this 30-minute long race. Rold is still somewhat close, but he has to get a little bit closer to even think about going for a dive bomb on Russell Soto. Soto, he positioned his car in exactly the right spot to try and withstand that pressure from Rold, withstand that attack in the process. But this fight is still very much on between these two. Rold is slowly reeling in Soto. I think this is a last opportunity, heading downhill into the heel for the last time in this race, and you can see Rold using up as much speed as he could, carrying a whole lot of speed into turn number 8, closing up that gap and nearly coming up blows. Heading through turn number 9 though, Rold does not have the advantage of another heavy braking zone. He just needs to wheel this car around the racetrack in the final 2 corners of this race to be able to get that move done on Soto, that or pressure him into some sort of mistake. Heading their way around the final corner, Soto, he clipped that curb. I think it's going to be a drag race between the two of them. It will be a drag race between the two of them. Side by side, Russell Soto wins it. Rold finishes in second. 0.035 of a second separating those two drivers after 31.5 minutes of racing action. Gotta give a heck of a lot of credit to Kevin Rold. He was trying to save up his stuff for the end of this race. I have a feeling, though, if he didn't go for that move into the inner loop and tried it maybe into turn number 6, 7, or 8, that race may have been his.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think Soto had the same thoughts that we did, that he may wait for the last lap. So he just went defensive going down the backstretch into the bus stop, and kind of rolled up a little bit, cost him a little bit of time. If he would have just kind of laid back and just remained patient, he might have had a good run coming down the sole of the boot, as they call it, between the toe and the heel. But still very, very close, half a car length basically at the line. Soto and Roll, great race, very strategically done, but very well raced.
Yeah, a well-composed drive for both of those drivers. It was a hard-fought but clean and respectful fight when everything is said and done. Both of the cars see the checkered flag. And I mean, they gave us a fantastic finish after over 30 minutes of racing action. Looking at some of the last drivers to come across the line now in the Superlap category, Aiden are going to make that 2 straight wins for the Superlap 4 entry. 1 at Long Beach, wins here at the Glen. Look at some nice donuts from the Superlap 3 car of Jake R. There you can see burning it down after 30 minutes plus of racing action. Some well-earned burnouts to be sure for the driver who, despite not winning in the Superlap category, ran into some difficulties, was leading quite comfortably. However, things didn't really shake out, and in the end, this car, the Superlap 4 entry, is going to be victorious in that Superlap class. I think all the cars have taken the racetrack. We'll try and get those results loaded up as quickly as we possibly can so we can move into some interviews before we wrap things up tonight here on Apex Racing TV. It was a great day of racing action, and in the end, Russell Soto takes it over Kevin Rold in P2. Actually, that was the practice results there. It's just about the same, though, in the race. Russell Soto still wins it. Kevin Rold still finishes in P2. And it was actually, in the practice session, it was more time between those two than it was in the race itself. 0.032 of a second between Soto and Rold after 30-plus minutes of racing action. It was a glorious night for those two drivers, and they gave us a fantastic fight from start to finish. Sean Fritz going to finish in 3rd, Andrew Mowat in 4th, Lincoln Olson in P5, Jason Williams in 6th, Trenton McMillan going to finish in 7th, Michael Schmidt going to finish in 8th. Aiden R. wins the Superlap class in the Superlap 4 car, finishing this race in 9th. Eric Christensen going to round out your overall top 10. Then looking through the rest of the field, we've got Eugene Clark, Alex Reuter, Jake R. in the Superlap 3 car, Andrew Gross, the Superlap 2 entry, finishes in 15th, Dominic Batts in 16th, Sean Gaynor in 17th, Michael Rodriguez finishes in P18, and we have Ryan Goff in 19th, Andrew M. finishing this race in 20th in the Superlap 7 car. Actually, yes, it will be 20. The live timing tower for me was showing 21st there, so not sure exactly what was going on there. My apologies for that, but still, he ends up in 20th. Oren Reuter finishes in 21st, Jay Lasco in 22nd, and William Linder, who I believe did not take the start of this race, is going to finish in 23rd. And Charles, we got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area. Who would you like to have a chat with first?
Well, I want to talk with, I'm going to let you have the winner. So I want to talk with Kevin Roll tonight. So we'll kind of work this in a little bit different order. Kevin, P2, congratulations. Very, very tight finish. Drag race down the front straight to end the race. I think we were talking about maybe just a little strategy playing out. You were very patient, waiting to that last lap before you decided to make any moves. Is that kind of how you were thinking how this race was going to work?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. It's that was definitely my thinking. I knew I had plenty of opportunities to drive by him up the hill, but I knew he would do the exact same thing I was doing and just wait for the last lap to try to make a move. Unfortunately, I didn't have the best run out of turn 1 that I was hoping for. It seemed like I had to be about 3/10 back in order to make the pass pretty easily going up the hill, but unfortunately I didn't get the best exit, so I didn't quite get enough overlap to challenge into the bus stop, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we were kind of talking about this during the race. That we had a lot of hard racing, and I think that caught some of the competitors out. Some of the guys that you would expect to be finishing up near the front of the field maybe caught them out a little bit and had some accidents and incidents early in the race, and kind of just made this really a 2-car show up front.
Yeah, I didn't see too much about what happened behind me. I was really focusing on Russell ahead. I definitely heard a call out from the spotter about some incidents behind. I was just trying to keep the pressure on Russell and hopefully force him into a mistake, but in typical Russell fashion, he didn't really make one, unfortunately. So I really was pressuring him, but it didn't work out for me in the end. But I'll take the P2.
There you go. And so we'll be looking toward the next round. So what are your thoughts about that?
What is the next track?
That's a good question. I was just thinking the same thing, as a matter of fact.
Coda.
I bet Ron can tell us if he's sitting there listening.
Circuit of the Americas, Coda.
Coda.
Ooh, that'll be an interesting one. I'm sure we'll have a bit of attrition in that one. Try to do the same thing, putting pressure on Russell. I know it's a similar track in the sense that it's a bit hard to drive away because it's such a long back straight. You really have to have quite a bit of pace in order to drive away from someone there. So I think it'll be another tight race for the first spot there.
Well, there you go. Kevin, congratulations, and we'll look to see you next week.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And that right there was Kevin Rold, who finishes this race in second. Going to be dragging in our race winner in just a couple of moments' time, Russell Soto. Grabs his third victory of the season. 3 for 3 thus far, Russell. It was a very hard-fought day for you behind the wheel at Watkins Glen. So talk us through that race. It looked very hectic just from our perspective in the commentary booth. I'm sure it was definitely pressure-packed from your perspective behind the wheel.
Most definitely, Ron. That was not an easy race. I mean, Kevin's a properly quick driver, and being up front, it was really me versus the draft. You know, how much can I pull away with the draft still being a factor? Every lap I was on the relative checking, okay, if he's 0.4 behind, he'll catch up to me at this point. You know, just trying to gauge how can I defend into the bus stop the entire race. And I knew he was waiting for the last lap, so, which is totally valid. That's a strategy I would do as well. But it was all about thinking about how am I going to defend, how am I going to make the most of it. And of course, all the while making no mistakes, because with that draft being a factor, he could easily get through. So it was all about hitting my marks, being consistent, and just doing everything I can to keep the car in front.
Yeah, I mean, you just positioned that car beautifully, especially on that final lap when Rold tried to go for that move heading into the bus stop. Was that mainly instinct, or did you have a feeling he was going to try and go for a move like that on that final lap, and you were just able to position that car and end up squeaking away with the victory?
No, I definitely knew that he would try to pull a move into that corner, because coming out of the turn 1, I knew he was pulling up to me right up to my rear wing on most of the laps, so I knew he had a good run coming out of there, and heading into the bus stop we'd probably be side by side, but I just took my chances, picked a side, chose the inside, and was able to just get through by sending it into the bus stop, and it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, this strategy of licking the stamp and sending it can occasionally work, and in your case, it certainly did towards the end of this race. Walking away from this one here at Watkins Glen with your third victory on the season. Must be feeling pretty nice heading into the final 2 races of the season, the next one being at Circuit of the Americas in just 1 week's time. So how do you think that race is going to be?
Oh, Ron, I think it's going to be even more action-packed. I think Coda, especially with how wide and how big that track is, it's going to promote some really good racing the same way Watkins did. You know, it's got a really interesting third sector that's really technical that can make some drivers make some mistakes. So I'm really interested to see how we do around there. Definitely going to be a lot slower than the F1 cars, but it should make for some great racing. I'm really excited for it.
Hey, in terms of the lap times, it may be slower than a Formula 1 competitor, but I'll tell you what, you guys are going to have a lot more racing than Formula 1 usually does whenever it rocks up to Coda. I say that the first ever race at Coda that I watched for Formula 1 was back in 2015 when they were running the inters until they pretty much turned into slicks, but that's a racing history story for another day. But Russell, well done on it, grabbing your third victory this season. And before we let you go and celebrate, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Absolutely, Ron. This was definitely a really hard-earned victory here. It was not an easy race. I'd love to thank Apex for putting on a great broadcast, DRSCCA for being an amazing organization that puts on this league, Superlap for being the primary sponsor and helping out with these amazing events coming out of Michigan, my family back home in New Jersey, my girlfriend, Tiffany, and just everyone who supports me. Either in real life or in the virtual series. So thank you again.
Well, I do have some good news for you, Russell. I'm from Philly, so if you want me to shout at your parents, I could probably just open up the window after this broadcast and just scream as loudly as I can. They may be able to hear me. But, Russell, well done on the win. Third victory on the season. Congratulations on that. And excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, you guys.
And that right there is Russell Soto, who would neither confirm nor deny that he will take up my offer of shouting at his parents from the other side of the Delaware River. So if by the time we come around for the next race of this season at Circuit of the Americas, if I am not present, it is very likely because my voice and my vocal cords have been reduced down to dust. But Charles, it was a really hard-fought day of racing action here at Watkins Glen. COTA in 1 week's time, the second to last race of this championship. That's going to be a whole lot of fun, so what are your thoughts heading into that one?
As much as I love Watkins Glen, that's the same level of not love that I have for COTA as far as racing. It's going to be a good show because we got a really good group of drivers that's going to be racing the track. I don't like racing COTA. I'll probably have a iracing story for next week regarding a brush with greatness, literally and figuratively. But we'll still look forward to it. It's going to be a good race. These guys always race hard, and let's hope for a little less attrition in the next race, even though it's a pretty difficult track.
I fully expect to hear that story in 1 week's time, Charles. I may have to break out my old key. Actually, I was going to say I may have to break out my old keyboard. Then I remembered I sent that to a Goodwill a couple of months ago. So I can't even break out my old keyboard to give you some nice dramatic music to play as you're telling us that story. But anyways, I think it's still going to be a very good race to look forward to here from round number 5 of the DRSCCA Sim Racing Series presented by Superlap, broadcasted exclusively here on Apex Racing TV. And you know, speaking of the action here on Apex, just is basically every single day at this point in the year. So that gives you more of a reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. The action came in spades here today. Saw some attrition, saw some great racing, and that battle towards the end was absolutely fantastic to watch. But as for this broadcast here tonight, I think that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie doing a wonderful job working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not too distant future.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.